Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Houston is Inspired on Afrovibes TV, the show where we share your stories of success. My name is Savannah Jones. I am your host for today, and I'm here with special guest star Stephen Huey, District 18 Congressional candidate. Hi, Mr. Huey. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So, shall we begin?
Sure.
My first question is I would like to start by having you introduce yourself to the audience.
So I'm Stephen Huey, native Texan. I lived in Nigeria some as a child. Over the years, I've spent a lot of time building software solutions from the ground up in giant corporations and multiple startups. Also, I make French press or pour over coffee every day. That's the secret of my success. Dark chocolate also goes a long way. My wife and I have four children, a son and three daughters, and Stephanie and I both went to Rice University.
I love that. My next question I would like to ask is what makes you the best candidate to represent District 18 in Congress?
So I know what it's like for hardworking Americans to try to take care of their families today. We're at the place where we are because a lot of politicians on both sides aren't listening to them and what they need. And not all the candidates can say they understand this experience. I also have the most extensive experience in the business world in major industries like finance, healthcare, and energy. And so honestly, I don't think any of the other candidates are anywhere near to that level. And more than any other candidate, I understand what it's like for perspectives on both sides of the aisle. I know so many people that don't seem to understand what the other side is thinking or why they're thinking that, right? And when I try to talk to someone from one side, they're just kind of painting the other side as thinking in one way. And I think it's not very productive to kind of just, write off everyone on the other side like that. Also, I'm not part of the political establishment. Many of the candidates are. So I'm not beholden to any powers behind the scenes that might be trying to call the shots. I know we have a problem with corruption, both in DC and in Houston. And, I'm not associated with any of that. I will not, my faith doesn't allow me to give into anything like that. And also my wife, she won't stand for it. Yeah.
I love that actually, because you represent a wide variety of people. Houston is a very diverse city. We're known for that, worldwide. And so for you to say, hey, I'm here to stand on this, and I'm here and open to speak on behalf of people on both sides, that's very open for you to do that. And it's very difficult to do that. A lot of people are very biased and they cling to what they've grown up in believing and what they believe to be right, and they're not willing to hear the other side's stance. So I think that's really intelligent of you to take that approach, and I think that's good for the people. I think that's something that we could benefit from.
Certainly, yeah.
Absolutely. So thank you for that. My next question I would like to ask you is, how did your story begin? Take us back to the very beginning, the roots of what make you who you are today.
So I'm from a small town near Houston, a native Texan. Saw Mattress Mac commercials on TV. Houstonians know what that is. And
we love our Mattress Mac.
Right. And I know you're a pretty amazing softball player. I did play a couple years of Little League before my family left the country. And I'm not as good as you. I used to joke that by moving to Nigeria, my parents derailed my chance in an MLB career. But I did make it to one Astros game before I left, and my family moved to Nigeria because there were missionaries there, and we lived in 3 different parts of the country, and it was a very transformative experience from my perspective, coming from Texas. And when I came back to Houston, it was for Rice University. It wasn't too far from Grandma's house, so it seemed like a good school to go to. And while I was there, I'm the kind of guy that I have so many interests, and I kind of wanted to do everything, and you have to choose, right? So it was tough to decide in college. I thought I might want to be a teacher because both of my parents had studied that at one point. And, I've told so many people over the years since then, don't worry, you can change later. In the 21st century, it's easier than ever to kind of, switch gears later if you want to do something different. So the fear of freezing up can slow you down. Yeah. And so I've just tried to encourage people to just try things. So after college, I thought I got some college loans I got to pay off. So I decided to go into the tech world. And I thought I might just do it for a few years, but it turned into one adventure after another. Giant companies, like I said, several startups. And a lot of times I chose the road less traveled because when I was in a giant bank I realized eventually a lot of the people there were there for the safe paycheck, right? A really comfortable corporate job. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, they were already providing for their families. And at the time, I really knew I wanted something more. So I ended up starting to join these startup companies, these software startups. It was very risky. A couple of them even went out of business. But I learned a lot more than I was getting to learn in the giant company, right? So I'm really grateful for trying those experiences over the years. Some of the startups did well. So I either joined or co-founded multiple companies. And as the years went on, you know, this whole COVID thing happened, and I had been through a lot of adventures. And so I felt like it was a good time to start my own software consulting firm. It kind of gave me a chance to have more flexibility with my family. You know, I've spent so many years sitting in traffic on Houston highways, 59, 610, I-10, 290, 45, right? So it finally gave me a chance to kind of like, if I wanted to schedule a business meeting, I can schedule it so I don't have to sit in rush hour, right? And, you know, might have to catch up on work at night since I have more time with my family during the day at times. But it's been a very good experience for me. And, you know, like I said, I will just encourage anyone to not be afraid to go out and try things. I know plenty of people, you know, I studied computer science at Rice University, but a lot of friends of mine made a career switch later on to go into programming. You know, they have boot camps for that. So whether you're interested in tech or some other industry, I just feel like in the 21st century, we have more opportunities than ever. And you should just get out there and see if you like it.
I love that
Yeah.
approach. I love that. I think that speaks to a lot of us people that are young as well, because a lot of us don't know, you know, exactly what field we want to go into. And we think we have to know these things. And what you're preaching from is life experience. You know, you're pivoting as you go, and that life experience is enriching you, and it makes you such a more well-rounded person. It can make you quicker on your feet and know how to respond to situations better. So I think people with life experience, they're able to handle things, you know, they're able to roll with the punches as they come. And that makes for a really good political representation. So thank you for that. That's a really awesome approach. All right. So my next question that I have for you is, what are your proudest accomplishments?
So honestly, such a relief. It was a long journey to win my wife over to marry me. So, I mean,
Shout out to
there,
his wife. We love that.
yeah, Stephanie's awesome. And you know, I think along the way, some of my friends thought it wasn't going to happen, you know, and at some point she was even living in a different city and I chased her down and won her over. And I will say she and I both, you know, can attest that God definitely helped us in our journey to make that happen.
Bless the most part.
And
That's
you know,
so sweet.
you know, there's nothing I've been happier about than staying the course, you know, and making, you know, getting over the finish line, you know, because it's been such a, you know, big joy of my life. And, you know, but in the working world, you know, like I said, I got to work on so many different projects over the years. And there was this one, my first healthcare software startup company. People don't go into healthcare software startups to make it big or rich or whatever, right? It's definitely a labor of love. It's a tough world. And anyway, I was the first programmer employee hired in this software startup. I actually turned down a job that was offering me $50,000 more, plus two other startups. I was, you know, they were talking to me about hiring me, and I ended up going with this one because I felt like it had the impact that I most wanted to make, right? And so I learned a lot while I was there, but there was this one little, I guess you could say, little project that ended up being a big deal. The CEO came to me and he's like, this one hospital system we were going to put the software in, they had a big problem. You know all those people answering phones in hospitals and they have complex call center software and all that. They're like, we really want to use your tool, but it doesn't work with our we have this $6 million software call center system, right? And so the CEO asked me, do you think you can make our tool kind of have its own call center system inside of it, which was not designed for that at all. This was painful. I spent 3 weeks working crazy late nights, and I got this done, and it literally replaced $1 million software after 3 weeks of work. And I mean, honestly, that was like, I've never been quite as happy as that.
You like to win. You like to win, you like to accomplish things. You like to pivot and roll with the punches like I referenced earlier, and a challenge doesn't scare you. I like that. A lot of people would be faced with the same thing. Hey, your forced software didn't work. You have to do it this way, and they would have been like, "Oh, no, I'm not going to do that." I'm not going to put in all that time, that effort into something that is probably not going to work anyway. But you were like, you know what? I'm going to take this challenge. I'm going to take it. I'm excited about it. And I'm going to make something really cool out of this. And you did. So I see why you picked that as your proudest accomplishment. And if you can do things like that for our city, I can imagine, all the positive changes that you can make for us, being able to take those challenges, take those risks, and not shy away from it. So I love that.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing that gets me up and going in the morning.
Yeah, that's definitely one heck of a way to start your morning. I love that. So my next question I would like to ask you is, what is your stance on the political landscape of our country?
Yeah, so it's a very tough time. It's stranger than in years past, right? I know a lot of people in the energy biz, and in the beginning of the year when Trump said, "Okay, drill baby drill," a lot of the oil executives were like, that's not how our business works. We can't just do that because we want to. It has to be profitable. And a lot of the policies are making it hard for them to do business right now. One of my neighbors is in HR at a major oil company, and she just had a sad time a few months ago, a lot of layoffs they were having to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and another oil company that friends of mine are in just did another series of layoffs. So honestly, there's the oil and gas side of things, and then there's all the kind of newer things in solar, wind, and batteries. And I know people that work in all of these different sides. We should be firing on all cylinders right now, not just picking and choosing and maybe doing bad policies for even the ones we're choosing. A lot of people's jobs depend on this, but the future of our country depends on this. And we need all the energy we can get. A lot of other things we do depend on that. I have so many friends that work in healthcare, nurses and doctors. I've worked in that industry on startups a couple times, and I've seen it's very difficult, right? It's a big, huge system, but right now we are cutting funding for health research. Decades of investment have given us the technology we have today to help people live longer. MD Anderson, I just celebrated a kid surviving 2.5 years of cancer. We wouldn't have had that without serious investment over decades. So we can't stop that now. And a lot of, even one of my doctor friends, she did research part-time in the med center, and hers was one of the first to get cut by the federal government. And now she's moved her whole family out of Texas. It's very sad. So we need someone in office who can understand how these industries actually work and what's needed. We shouldn't be playing games with policies like cuts for the most vulnerable. And that's why I've been saying that based on my experience, more than any other candidate, I can't understand how these industries work, what's needed to move the country forward.
Yeah, I really like that. You have a very valuable stance on that. With your work experience background in those areas, knowing people in those areas, you can speak on the platform of knowing their needs and their issues, and you can advocate for them. And I think that's so important for our city. So those are some of the biggest industries in our city. And I think that going after that and trying to make change in those areas is exactly what we need. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
We'll be right back after this commercial break. Welcome back, everyone, to Houston is Inspired. I'm your host, Savannah Jones. I'm here today with Stephen Huey, District 18th Congressional candidate. So welcome back. All right, let's get into our next question.
Okay.
So the next question I would like to ask you is, what sets you apart from your opponents?
So first of all, I'm not a career politician. I'm running against 3 attorneys. I like to joke I'm the non-attorney as well, but I'm just taking money from grassroots donors like yourself. If in politics, there's a lot of big money influence, right? And I feel like that's drowning out the voices of the voters, what the actual people want their representatives to do. We don't know who all the puppet masters are in the shadows, but I can definitely say I'm a candidate who's not taking any money that would compromise my positions.
Yeah, no, that's definitely powerful. I appreciate that. Absolutely. I think that definitely sets you apart. You being like, yes, there is a big money issue, and no, I'm not part of that. I'm not a politician. I'm representing you, the people. That is a very strong position, and I appreciate that. I'm sure all the people watching as well appreciate that you're here to represent them. You're not just here for the paycheck. So we appreciate that very much. All right, my next question is, what has been the most rewarding experience in your political career thus far?
Yeah, so obviously stepping out into onto the campaign trail was a very new experience for me. I knew it was going to be a lot of work, a lot of new challenges. I love talking to strangers all day long, finding out their life story. But kind of speaking to large groups was kind of a new thing for me. And there was this one event near downtown, and I'm speaking to this large group of people, and I'm just kind of up there on the mic and wondering, what are they thinking about me? Do they feel like I'm really trustworthy, going to take care of their interests? And this lady who came up to me afterwards, she has a nonprofit in the Fifth Ward, and she was like, "I want to talk to you. You're saying something different from all the other candidates." And I was like, "Oh, what's going to happen here?" But then she talked my ear off for 10 minutes, and I realized that she did feel like I was trustworthy, and it's been amazing because every day since then, she's been texting me encouraging words to kind of start my day. Um, so honestly, that's put a bounce in my step when I'm kind of stepping out into the unknown each day.
Yeah.
And I'm just really glad to know that there are people out there like that who are, looking forward to seeing me win.
Yeah, I mean, that's very, very powerful, for you to say that and to have people that come up to you that way and they're like, you know what, I like what you're saying. You're saying something different. You're doing something different. It's actually kind of funny is I did the same thing with you. When I first met you, I came up to you and I was like, man, I really like what you're saying. You speak to a wide variety of people. You're very warm and welcoming and, just a great person, in general. And I really appreciate that about you. And I'm glad that it's not just me that saw that, but many people can see that. And that it takes a lot. It's, if you're going to represent our city, you have to represent us as people as well. And you have to be somebody that's going to be, well liked. And I think that's definitely, you have that. You have that for sure. And, that lady, sending you those words, that's what she's saying and I'm saying. And a lot of people that meet you say that. So well done, very cool.
Thanks.
My next question I have for you is what inspires you the most? What motivates you to stay on the right path?
For sure, it's my faith in God. God says, to whom much is given, much is required, but it's not necessarily going to be easy. Jesus himself said, in this world you will have trouble, but fortunately he reminds us that he's an overcomer, so we can expect that. And really, we're not supposed to be kind of walking in fear. You're not supposed to lead by fear. The Bible says perfect love casts out fear. So really my job is just to get out there every day, remembering that, God's got my back. I've got friends encouraging me, praying for me. And my job is to love people, listen to them, and try to help them.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you bringing that up and saying that that inspires you because, I'm Christian as well. And that's a basis of my show as well as I believe that, having faith and living by faith, it makes you more successful in terms of makes you choose the right things and, kind of lead by example. And so I definitely think if you're incorporating that into your approach of how to help our city, I think that's definitely much needed. A lot of times big cities, things like that can get lost, things like, living by your faith and conducting your business by your faith, that can get lost in large cities. So I think if you bring that back for us, that would really, be wonderful. I'd love to see that here. So thank you for that.
For sure.
My next question to you are what are some key points that you would like to address if you are elected?
So I've told many people unemployment and inflation are at record highs. If we don't get sensible policies in place, employers won't be able to hire young people entering the workforce. There are so many, catastrophic effects that could happen down the line. So we need to reverse course on some of the failed economic policies. We shouldn't be playing games with people's healthcare, seniors, and the most vulnerable. We don't need to have chaotic cuts. We need to have strategic long-term plans if we need to make adjustments. It's a dangerous game. In our city, everyone knows that flooding is a huge issue. way back. You remember the Great Houston Migration for Hurricane Rita, the hurricane that didn't really happen, but 3 out of 4 million people got on the roads. And my own brother's wedding in San Antonio, a lot of people didn't make it to the wedding because of that. So we have this big problem. It keeps happening time and time again where there's a lot of damage. And there's people that want to build like a big giant, the Ike Dike out in the ocean, right? And that can work. There's, they've done it in Holland, but that will be a long-term project. There's another thing we can do that we can get done faster. The Army Corps of Engineers has already been studying it with our county. It's to put these big 40-foot tunnels, about 140 foot under the ground, to whisk that water away to the ship channel. And, recently there was a politician nearby here in the Houston area who was trying to say we need to get this billionaire to bring in his company to do smaller tunnels, shallower depth. And engineers have said that's not going to work as well. It's not going to get as much water out. And I feel like there's just money involved there and it's not serving the people well. I don't want to spend a lot of money and then we end up with a solution that doesn't solve the problem. And some politician in Austin was trying to back those people up and say, oh yeah, that billionaire is the only one who can make this happen. No. In Malaysia, almost 20 years ago, they put in the smart tunnel. It saved them from tons of flood damage for years. If they can do it, it's not science fiction. We can do it today. We don't need that billionaire. We already have the Army Corps of Engineers. They are actually serving the American people, not profit. So we need to get this done, and it'll be one of my top priorities to fund it.
I love that. Yeah, I love that. I mean, you're basically speaking to reallocating our resources and our funding to better serve us, and I think that's so important. People are always talking about the economy and how, it's so difficult, everything's so expensive right now. It's like, why waste money, on projects that aren't serving us? Why not reallocate and re-put those funds into something better? Yeah. So I like that you bring that up. I think that will speak to a lot of people. So I'm sure that my viewers can agree, with his stance on that as well. So is there anything else that you would love our viewers and audience to know about you?
When I first entered this political race, some friends were concerned. They're like, don't you know there are nefarious people out there? And I said, yes, I'm aware there are wolves in sheep's clothing, but the challenge is worth it for protecting and serving the people of the district. Also, when I first researched whether to enter this race, for 2 months in the spring, I was, meeting with people and learning everything I could. I called a friend who a long time ago, 15 years ago, worked for a congressman in DC. And I said, do you think I'm crazy for trying to do this? And he said, no, man, this is what we always said you should do. A lot of them don't even like people and you love people. So it was very encouraging to have people like that at my back,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're ready to take on whatever challenge comes your way. Like we mentioned earlier in this discussion, you're able to pivot, you're able to roll with the punches, you're able to take on challenges, you're listening to your people, you know what industries need help, you know where the funding needs to go. So I would love to see this in action. I really appreciate everything you've had to say today. It's been really awesome having you on the show today.
It's been great to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your amazing story. And you're truly an exceptional person. I'm very glad to have had you here. I feel honored to be here with you today. I really hope you continue to do this wonderful work for our city and continue to pave the way for others like you to make positive change. So I would love to see that happen, and I'm sure the rest of District 18 can agree. Now to my beloved viewers, stay inspired. And one more thing I'd like to ask is, if I were to locate more information about you, where would I do so?
All right, go to StephenHueyForCongress.com. If that's too long to type, just put in Huey.vote and it'll take you straight there. Please go tell all your neighbors all about me and remember to go vote in a few weeks.
Thank you very much for that. And thank you for listening in, and vote for Mr. Stephen Huey.